Hey everybody, it's Mike Young with aPlantBasedDiet.org. You may be wondering, Mike, why are you talking about Toyota trucks on your nonprofit plant-based channel? Well, if you're not, unless you're new to the channel, brand new, you may notice that I do put up some videos about Toyota trucks from time to time. I've used them for many decades. And if you're into farming and growing plants, you need to have a truck. And that's why. And these trucks have been legendary for their reliability and their efficiency. And that's why I generally tend to use Toyota trucks. I know that Tesla's coming out with a Cybertruck, and that remains to be seen about how efficient that vehicle actually is, and other things for actual work use. But for work, pickup trucks, like on a farm, growing plants is the best thing, pickup trucks and trailers. So let's get right into it. First of all, let me tell you right away, what model years am I talking about? This is a massive problem. Look behind me. This does not look good, and it's not good. It's a defect. It is a design flaw. I know I've talked about Tesla's design flaws on my other channel at digitalnomad.net, for the Model X, which is the front drive shafts, and even Model S as well. If you have all-wheel drive, the dual motors, there's still a problem on those vehicles, and that's a design flaw. I go into that in more detail on that channel. This that is more of an annoyance design flaw. This is a real safety issue. Okay, as you can see from that truck over my right shoulder over here. Anyway, so I can put my phone down. Let me just tell you, this deals with the first generation Tacoma, not the old pickup. I used to have an old 1990 Toyota pickup, was not included. When they came out with Tacoma in 1996 to 2004, the first generation, this is the design. It's bad. So I'm telling you this so you avoid these vehicles, because there's no fixing this. There's none. And I'll explain more as we get into this video. 1996 to 2004, Toyota Tacoma, original generation. The 4Runner, which was based off the Toyota Tacoma of that same generation, which was 1996 to 2002. I guess they made some changes in the last 2 years of the 4Runner. It was a heavier vehicle, and they did. So 1996 to 2002, 4Runner, it affects this. And then the Tundra, which I have one, and it's basically junked at this point in time. And I never had this problem, but I didn't keep it long enough, because sure enough, I would have had this problem. The Toyota Tacoma original first generation, which was the year 2000 to 2006. I had a year 2000. It was an okay truck with an awesome V8 in there, and it felt like a car, but the rest of it was no good compared to my 1990 made in Japan pickup. And this is just another example of why it was no good. Okay, so Toyota Tundra, original generation, 2000 to 2006. And lastly, the Sequoia, which was the SUV based off of that same generation Tundra, which was the year 2001 to 2007. And I'm going to put a link down below in the description of this video to our Toyota Trucks discussion group on Facebook. We've got close to 100,000 people in there. Please go ahead and join it if you want to. I'm going to post this video in there as well, so that this is used as a resource for people, because this is a serious design flaw. This is the problem. Now let's cut to the chase. Over my right shoulder is a catastrophic failure of the front suspension. So what we're talking about is on these model years of Toyota trucks, only trucks and SUVs that were based on the same truck platform, they had this ball joint design that is actually an upside down ball joint if you look at how everyone else does it. And what it did is it allowed that, with time and wear, eventually, because it's upside down and the front suspension, it's on the lower control arm, it would eventually give way and force the lower control arm down, imploding the front suspension, and basically leaving your wheel like this. It would usually screw your fender up, everything in there. Your entire suspension will be ruined. Your CV joints, your axles will be ruined, your brake lines, etc., 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 all needing repair when this eventually happens. And this is the thing. The design of this is a failure guaranteed design. Almost nobody has this inverted design. Now, if you look over here, you see that let me see if I get my finger on it. There's the ball joint. It's a lower ball joint. It mounts underneath that lower control arm. And what happens is, because of the design, it's got this threaded end. And if you look up on top, you can't see it. Inside of this metal area with 4 bolts is where the ball is. And eventually, all this force is pushing down on this lower control arm, eventually with wear, because you cannot lubricate these, and we'll get into that in a little bit. It's going to eventually force this ball out of the socket because the socket's going to have so much wear in it. You see what I'm saying? And it's going to force the suspension to separate, which will implode like this. Guaranteed. It's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. So you need to check these. And I would say, first off, right away, let me tell you, you want to change these between 50 and 100,000 miles. Of every 50 and 100,000 miles, do not go over 100,000 miles. My truck, I'm just learning this now. My original Tacoma from the year 2000 had like 130,000 miles. I am so glad that I stopped driving it, because I'm only now becoming aware of the severity and the certainty of this problem. And by the way, if you're only now becoming aware of the severity and the certainty of this problem, please help me out. Over here down below, there are 3 dots, and you can either see those 3 dots and or you will see some ovals with a thanks or super thanks button. Please go to that button and click on it and tip me and commensurate with the amount of value that you are receiving from this video. Also, share this video with friends. This is the way that we can keep producing videos like this. I really thank you. And all the money you tip me with is going to our nonprofit, because it's on the nonprofit channel. Hopefully you'll help out another plant farmer with their Toyota pickup truck. Okay. Okay, let's continue. So this is what happens. There's no question. It's going to happen. Now, if you think about it, this ball joint over here is upside down. So normally it's inverted. So if there's pressure going down on it, or if it's higher up in the suspension components, even if it breaks, it's not going to separate the lower control arm and cause catastrophic suspension failure. That's the way it is on every other car made. This is a defective design. The only way to remedy the situation is that you don't buy this vehicle, because as of now, I don't know of any retrofits of a newer suspension design that work with this pickup truck. If you know of some, please let us know in the comments to help people out, because I don't think anything's going to happen at this point. Toyota, they are historical. I mean, these are old vehicles at this point in time. They're still on the road. And, you know, it's only now that it's really become a certainty to people, especially when you see a lot of these older ones. And they're like, people are like, oh, it's an older Toyota. Yeah, the wheel broke. I mean, what is this? Year 2001 and they're still driving it? No wonder the wheel broke. No, that's not why. That's not why. Well, they modified it some way. That's why the wheel broke. No, that's not why. It was a guaranteed certainty that this ball joint was going to separate and cause front suspension collapse and catastrophic damage because of the design. The design, I will repeat again, that every other vehicle uses on their front suspension with ball joints is where the ball joint is not upside down like it is on these. The upside down ball joint is what causes a certain catastrophic failure at some point. And the other design is actually, I would say, fail safe. That's why you don't see this going on with other vehicles. All right. So in my mind, these Toyotas are not worth buying. I would not buy one. I mean, yeah, they got frame rust problems. They got some of the older Tundras like mine would shake because the body wasn't very rigid. They had undersized brakes on them, all these other things. It wasn't that great of a vehicle. It was very refined and it had some really cool Camry door handles and sounded like a car when you closed the doors. But it was a terrible, thirsty V8 in those original Tundras, so don't buy it anyway. You're going to spend so much money, and you got to redo the suspension parts between 50 and 100,000 miles, guaranteed, or catastrophic failure. Now, when you do replace them, some things to keep in mind, all right? Number one is you got 4 bolts that go with this. You see those? Replace them. You need to make sure that this isn't going to separate too with some bad bolts because of all the stress that's on that one point. That's a huge point of stress for the suspension. It's a horrible, horrible design. Make sure you replace those with new bolts. And everything needs to be OEM. I don't care if you find an aftermarket part that has a grease fitting on it that says, oh, you can grease this, it's going to last longer. No, it's not. It's not designed as well. It's not manufactured as well. It's not made to the same tolerances. It's not. Toyota at least made some quality parts on these things, knowing how much stress was going on them from the factory. Get the Toyota parts and make sure you use your VIN to search it up, because there were many modifications made even during the 4 different vehicles, model years that I discussed in the beginning of this video. Go back to the beginning if you didn't pick those up. Those are the ones that are concerned. Look up the parts by VIN, get the Toyota bolts and nuts, get the Toyota lower front suspension ball joints, change them out if you haven't already. If you bought your vehicle used and you don't know who did the work or what parts they used, for 100% certainty, go ahead and do this now. You're going to thank me later. It's going to cause a massive problem, not just for you, but for anyone you might crash into or kill as a pedestrian because of the ridiculous problems with this vehicle. And actually, if you know some horrific crashes or some deaths or pedestrian deaths or cyclist deaths, please let us know, because Toyota really did people a disservice. Toyota has, in general, a very, very good product line, extremely reliable, but this is a massive safety hazard that cannot be overlooked. And like I said, the only way you're going to deal with this if you own one of these trucks, first of all, don't even ride in one. Don't ride in one. You're taking your life in your hands unless you know the owner and that they've done all this maintenance. Remember, every 50 to 100 miles, not 50 to 100, oh my gosh, that's a lot of maintenance. Every 50,000 to 100,000 miles max, you must replace the 2 front ball joints, 1 on each side, lower ball joints, LBJ, and all 4 bolts and nuts, all OEM Toyota. And you must torque these bolts to the correct amount too. Make sure that you do that properly. And you know what? As long as you do that, you will not have any problems, most likely. And, you know, when this thing wears, like I said, it basically pulls itself out and collapses. It basically forces that lower control arm down. You're going to hit a hard bump. It's going to compress. And then when it's worn enough, it's just going to pop out when it expands after that bump. And you've lost all control of the vehicle at that point. You can't steer. You can't brake, although you will come to a stop pretty darn fast. Okay. Glad I got all this out. Hopefully this is helpful to you. And I don't know what to say except do not buy one of these vehicles. Do not ride in one of these vehicles. Toyota is never going to admit any fault. They're going to always say that something was not right with the parts. Some of them do have recalls on them because they say some of the parts were not machined right or were not manufactured right. But the reality is this is a faulty engineering design from the very beginning, guaranteed certain catastrophic failure, as opposed to the fail-safe design that's used in every other vehicle on the road. And actually, if you know of another vehicle with a similar design and problem, let us know in the comments, because I would like to know about it and I'd like to avoid those too. So thank you very much. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next video. And there we go. Bye-bye.